Good evening and welcome to Future Forward, the program where we tackle the most pressing issues of our time. The topic tonight is one that affects us all, from the products we buy to the planet we inhabit. Should plastic packaging be completely banned? It's a question that sparks intense debate, touching on our consumption habits, our economic structures, and, of course, our environmental responsibilities. On one hand, the environmental impact of plastic is undeniable, with images of polluted oceans and wildlife in distress becoming all too common. On the other hand, plastic serves a critical function in our modern lives, from preserving food to ensuring medical safety. To help us navigate this complex issue, we have two distinguished guests with very different perspectives. Dr. Ben Carter is an environmental scientist who argues that nothing short of a complete ban will suffice to address the crisis. And Sophia Weber is a packaging industry consultant who believes the solution lies in innovation and responsible management, not outright elimination. Welcome to you both.
Thank you, Elena. It's a privilege to be here to discuss this critical issue. Let's not mince words. We are facing an unprecedented environmental crisis, and our addiction to plastic is at the heart of it. Our planet is choking on plastic. We've produced more of this material in the last decade than in the entire 20th century. It's a material designed to last for centuries, yet we use it to create products that we throw away in mere minutes. This represents a fundamental flaw in our approach to consumption. The detrimental impact is all around us, and it's far more severe than most people realize. Plastic waste is pervasive in our oceans, forming vast garbage patches. The largest, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, is now estimated to be 3 times the size of France. This visible waste is a death sentence for marine life, killing more than 1 million seabirds and 100,000 marine mammals every single year, through ingestion and entanglement. But the problem is more insidious than just the waste we can see. This plastic breaks down, but it never disappears. It just becomes smaller. These microplastics are now found in everything from our drinking water and table salt to the air we breathe and the food we eat. They've been found in the deepest ocean trenches and on the highest mountain peaks. The long-term health consequences of ingesting these tiny plastic particles and the chemicals they carry are still largely unknown, and that is a terrifying prospect. For decades, we've been told that recycling is the answer. It is not. That has been a carefully constructed lie to allow us to consume without guilt. Globally, it's estimated that only 9% of all plastic waste has ever been recycled. The system is fundamentally broken. Much of our plastic packaging is simply not designed to be recyclable due to mixed materials, dyes, and food contamination. Furthermore, the economic incentives just aren't there. It's almost always cheaper to produce new virgin plastic from fossil fuels. We cannot recycle our way out of this problem. Therefore, the only logical and responsible course of action is to enact a complete ban on single-use plastic packaging. This is not an extreme position. It's a necessary one. It will force industries to innovate in sustainable materials and compel us, as a society, to rethink our relationship with disposable goods. We have a moral obligation to future generations to stop this pollution at the source. The time for incremental measures and empty promises has long passed.
Thank you, Elena, and thank you, Ben, for outlining the stakes. Let me begin by saying that I and the responsible members of my industry absolutely share Dr. Carter's concern for the environment. The issue of plastic pollution is real and urgent. However, responding to this complex challenge with a proposal as blunt and absolute as a complete ban is an overly simplistic solution that would be deeply counterproductive. A ban fails to acknowledge the enormous benefits that plastic packaging provides, and it ignores the serious, unintended consequences of its alternatives. We must ask ourselves, why do we use plastic packaging in the first place? It plays an essential function in modern society that we cannot easily replace. Take food waste, for example. Plastic packaging extends the shelf life of fresh food dramatically. A cucumber wrapped in 1.5 grams of plastic film can last up to 14 days, compared to just 3 days, unwrapped. This is not trivial. Food waste is a massive contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. If food waste were a country, it would be the third largest emitter after China and the US. In the medical field, the benefits are even more critical. Sterile plastic packaging for things like syringes, IV bags, and surgical tools is non-negotiable for preventing infection and ensuring patient safety. A complete ban would put lives at risk. Furthermore, we have to consider the environmental trade-offs of the alternatives. A ban on plastic is not a silver bullet. It simply trades one set of complex environmental problems for another. Switching to glass or metal, for instance, would significantly increase the weight of products. This would lead to a much higher carbon footprint from transportation, burning more fossil fuels to move heavier goods. Ramping up paper and cardboard production on the scale required would have devastating impacts on our forests, potentially leading to increased deforestation and biodiversity loss. The path forward is not elimination, but innovation and responsible management. We need to invest in creating a true circular economy for plastics, where the material is never treated as waste. This means smarter design so that all packaging is 100% recyclable or compostable. It means massive investment in our recycling infrastructure to handle these materials effectively. And it means holding producers financially responsible for the entire life cycle of their packaging. A ban is a sign of giving up on our ability to solve complex problems. I believe we are capable of managing this material intelligently, preserving its benefits, while eliminating its negative impacts. That is the truly ambitious and progressive path.
Thank you both for those clear and compelling opening statements. You've perfectly framed the debate. Ben, I'd like to start the rebuttal with you. Sophia makes a powerful point about unintended consequences. She argues that a ban would increase food waste, and that the alternatives have their own serious environmental costs. How do you respond to the charge that a ban is simply trading one crisis for another?
That's a common argument from the industry, and I believe it presents a false choice. It assumes that our current system of consumption is the only one possible. The challenge of food preservation is a logistical one that we can solve with innovation in other areas. We relied on other methods for centuries before plastic became dominant. This means improving supply chains to shorten the time from farm to table. It means promoting local produce and seasonal eating, which reduces the need for long-term preservation. It also means expanding the use of refillable and reusable container systems, where consumers bring their own packaging to stores. These challenges are temporary and solvable. In contrast, the damage from non-biodegradable plastic accumulating for centuries in our ecosystem is permanent. We're creating a toxic legacy that will last for millennia. We need systemic change in how we produce and consume food, not just a simple switch of materials. The priority must be to stop the irreversible pollution at its source.
If I may interject, Elena, systemic change is a wonderful ideal, but it's not a practical, immediate solution for feeding a global population of 8 billion people. Suggesting we completely redesign our global food distribution network overnight is unrealistic. People in urban centers cannot always access local farm produce, and global trade is a necessity. A circular economy for plastics, however, is an achievable goal within our current system. It means treating plastic not as waste, but as a valuable resource to be captured and reused endlessly. Focusing on creating a closed-loop system is far more realistic and less disruptive than the radical overhaul Dr. Carter is suggesting.
Elena, that sounds good, but it's a fantasy. A circular economy for plastic is a unicorn the industry has been chasing for 40 years, while the world burns. Plastic fundamentally degrades every time it's mechanically recycled. A plastic bottle cannot be recycled into another bottle infinitely. It gets downcycled into a lower quality product, like a carpet or a park bench, and its next stop is the landfill. This is not a circle. It's a one-way street to the dump, just with a brief pause in the middle.
Sophia, turning to you on that point, Ben highlighted that recycling rates are incredibly low, and he questions the very concept of a circular economy for plastics. If the current system is failing so badly, why should we believe that simply investing more in it is the answer? Why is that a better path than the more decisive action of a ban?
The system's current failure is not a reflection of the material itself, but of our immature infrastructure and a historic lack of political will. A ban is essentially admitting defeat. The more ambitious and ultimately more effective solution is to finally commit to fixing the system. We now have the technology and the policy models to do this properly. For instance, Dr. Carter is correct about the limitations of mechanical recycling, but he's ignoring the rapid advances in chemical recycling. These new technologies can break down complex, mixed plastics back into their original chemical building blocks, allowing us to create new, virgin-quality plastic without using fossil fuels. This enables a true circular process. We also need to implement robust, extended producer responsibility policies globally. This makes manufacturers pay for the collection and recycling of their products, creating a powerful financial incentive to design packaging that is easy to recycle and to fund the infrastructure needed.
With respect, this sounds wonderful in theory, but it's the same narrative the industry has been promoting for decades. While the problem has grown exponentially, chemical recycling is currently energy-intensive, incredibly expensive, and produces its own hazardous byproducts. It is not a scalable solution. It's a distraction. It often feels like a delaying tactic. While we wait for this perfect hypothetical circular economy to emerge, trillions more pieces of microplastic are contaminating our environment every single year. We are at a tipping point where the damage is becoming irreversible. We don't have time for more incremental promises from the very industry that profits from the status quo. The situation requires a firm, unambiguous stop. We must turn off the tap.
Sophia, a question about accountability. Dr. Carter frames this as a tactic by the industry to avoid responsibility. How do you respond to the accusation of greenwashing, where companies spend more time and money marketing themselves as environmentally friendly than on minimizing their environmental impact?
I understand the skepticism, and it's true that in the past, some companies have not been sincere in their efforts. That is why robust, legally binding policy is so important. This is not about voluntary pledges anymore. We're talking about regulation like the EU's Circular Economy Action Plan, which sets mandatory targets for recycled content and recyclability. When companies are legally and financially bound to meet these targets, their behavior changes. We're already seeing a massive shift in R&D investment towards sustainable packaging design and recycling technology. Because the legislative writing is on the wall. Greenwashing is a real problem, but the solution is strong regulation and enforcement, not throwing away a valuable material altogether.
Dr. Carter, let me pose a final challenge to you. A ban on cheap, lightweight plastic packaging could disproportionately affect lower-income families. Products may become more expensive, and access to certain goods might be reduced. Is there not a social justice issue here that a complete ban overlooks?
That's an important question, but it views the problem through too narrow a lens. The greatest social injustice is the fact that the negative consequences of plastic pollution fall heaviest on those same low-income communities. Where are the landfills and incinerators that release toxic fumes typically located? They're disproportionately in poor neighborhoods. Which communities around the world suffer most from the polluted rivers and coastlines that damage their health and livelihoods? It's the poor and the marginalized. The temporary convenience of cheap, disposable goods is a poor trade-off for the long-term, systemic poisoning of your environment and your body. A ban, coupled with support for sustainable alternatives, is ultimately the most just and equitable solution.
We're nearing the end of our time. I will now ask each of you for a brief closing statement. Sophia, you may begin.
A complete ban on plastic packaging is a blunt instrument. It's an emotional reaction that ignores the vital role plastic plays in food safety, medicine, and in reducing other, more significant environmental impacts, like carbon emissions from transport. It overlooks the serious environmental costs and practical impossibilities of the alternatives. The answer is not to run from the challenge, but to meet it head-on with human ingenuity. Let's choose a smarter, more sophisticated path. One of relentless innovation in materials, massive investment in new recycling technologies, and holding corporations legally and financially responsible. Let's choose progress over prohibition.
Thank you. Dr. Carter, your final thoughts.
The evidence is overwhelming, the science is clear, and the stakes could not be higher. We're systematically poisoning our planet for the sake of a few moments of convenience. Continuing to rely on industry promises of a future technological fix is a gamble we cannot afford to lose. Their decades of delay have brought us to the brink. The choice is clear: a healthy, sustainable planet for our children, or a world drowning in its own disposable waste. For the sake of all life on Earth, we must be bold. We must ban single-use plastic packaging, completely and without delay.
And that is where we must leave this vital discussion. My sincere thanks to Dr. Ben Carter and Sophia Weber for their insightful and passionate perspectives. They've laid bare the central conflict, the call for drastic, immediate action versus the call for managed, technological innovation. The path forward remains uncertain, but the conversation is essential. Thank you for joining us on Future Forward.